if you're trying to like hack the algorithm, right, and do these like quick rapid fire growth tools, yeah, they do work. But at the same time, it's not going to give you sustained longevity, and it's not going to build you up that career that's going to get you featured on Time magazine, for example. So if you're looking for quick fix, you're going to get quick results, but that also means a quicker downfall.
In this week's episode, we have Nikki Sharp, who's an internationally acclaimed health and wellness expert, podcaster, influencer, author, app developer. I mean, she is an incredible wealth of information. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about not being an influencer, but rather being a person of influence, plus social media marketing and so much more. Let's paddle in. Aloha and welcome to the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. Today we have with us a really special guest. We have Nikki Sharp. Nikki Sharp is someone I met just recently at a Tony Robbins event. And she's like a 3-time published author. She's an expert in yoga, health, fitness. She's got a #1 mobile app and just an all-around amazing human being. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Nikki.
Thank you so much. What an intro. I wish that people would go around saying that all the time, right? Like introducing you like that.
Well, this is like your second intro, because there's obviously one just before this too that goes into the lengthy, amazing background that you have. I mean, that's maybe a great place to start is, tell us about yourself. Like what are you most excited about right now? And then let's dive a little deep into the history of what got you here.
Oh my God, I love it. What am I most excited? I am excited about everything. And I know that probably sounds pretty cliche, but I've been through such rough times in my life, and I've battled depression and anxiety that I wake up now every day pretty excited about what I'm doing. But that being said, in just a few days, I'm actually moving. I live in Paris at the moment, and I'm moving to London, and the universe has kind of been guiding me there. There's a lot of opportunity. So I'm very excited about that. I'm sad about leaving Paris, obviously, but I'm excited for new challenges and what will come in this summer. So I would say that, but like, I'm excited about everything.
All right. Well, tell us about what it is that you do. I mean, the reason that I, invited you on the podcast was I was just blown away by your massive following on Instagram. You have over 350,000 followers on Instagram. You've got a massive amount of PR and news coverage and so forth of all the different content that you've produced, worked with. You're obviously a leading influencer in the space, and you just got so much going on. How does somebody describe Nikki Sharp?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. And I don't really know the answer, but I guess I'll take a stab at it. I would describe myself as an entrepreneur of sorts who is constantly learning, growing, seeking, evolving, and then sharing everything that I learn. So my life's mission is pretty much to provide knowledge so that people can take back their power. And we know that without knowledge, you can't take action. And without action, knowledge means nothing. So I like to give the base step for people then to take the action part. And I do that through a host of ways. I mean, I do that through health and wellness, which I'm super passionate about. And then I also do that now through helping individuals and companies and brands with their branding, and then how that translates to social media. And the reason that I do that side of things outside of what my career is as a health and wellness expert is that I've built my brand from, the ground up. I had 0 followers when I started. Nobody knew my name. And
when did you start?
I started Instagram about 7 years ago. And I mean, I didn't know a thing about health. I didn't know how to boil an egg at that point. I didn't know anything in that realm. And I was actually battling 2 eating disorders, incredibly bad acne. I had 5 years straight of taking sleeping pills and insomnia, like depression. The doctors tried to put me on antidepressant medication, like you name it, all of those things. And so as I started learning more, and I'll tell the full story of my Instagram in a moment, but just going from that and having nothing when I started 7 years ago to 7 years later, I'm a 3-time published author. 2 of my books are published through Random House, one of the best publishers in the world. I have a number 1 app, as you said, and that went number 1 in 6 countries within 24 hours of launching it. I have my own podcast, which is an iTunes top 50. And so I'm really passionate about sharing all the things I've learned, whether it's through, overcoming depression and insomnia and anxiety, to the eating disorders, and then how to grow your brand. So my passion goes across a lot of different fields.
So have you been just sort of building up your audience? If you were to go back, 7 years ago, would it been you built it up through sharing your journey, or did you go through that journey and then suddenly decide you're going to build a following?
Great question. I started my account actually, and this might be a good place just to share a little bit about how I started, because
Sure.
I did not anticipate becoming an influencer. And when I say that, there was no such thing as an influencer when I started. And I thought I was on Instagram late. It felt like everyone else was already on it. So I started a second Instagram account, which I was then posting, food photos and pictures of motivational things, of like fit bodies and like inspiring quotes that was helping me get through my eating disorders. And I would post headless body shots. So, from my neck down. And then I would be really honest and say, even though I was very skinny because I had an eating disorder, I would then share, like, oh, I don't feel good today but then I would always put a positive spin on it. And the more that I did that, people started just randomly following me. And I was hitting the popular page back when we had that a few years ago. I was hitting that 2 times a day because my content was resonating with people, and I was doing it all for myself. I was posting to help me at the end of the day. And I believe that by sharing things that were authentic to myself, I naturally then attracted that audience. So from there, the community, within a few months, I had 3,000 followers, and that was like also unheard of. The largest account on Instagram at the time was like 10,000 followers. So then mine started to grow a little bit more, and I went from 10,000 followers in January to 100,000 followers that following May. So less than 6 months. And I never meant to create the community, but the community created itself because of A, sharing authenticity, B, starting to market ebooks, which I was creating for my audience. And then I think C, because I was always interacting with them. And it was never, because I never set out to create the community, I was just constantly impressed and amazed that people were leaving comments, and like I would always comment back to people. So that's kind of how it grew. A long way.
So you were personally engaging with people, but in that time, did you have any press? Like I look at all the press that you have. Was to create that big jump, was it a result of any press, or is that just all organic growth from your engagement?
It was all organic. It was hitting the popular page, which is now called the discovery page. And you still do get a lot of followers if you hit the discovery page. It was from doing a lot of shout outs and like collaborations back in the day. What I've noticed actually is that when Instagram was at that place, people were a lot more free and open to share each other's accounts to help each other grow. And it's almost like as it's gotten bigger and people realize that it's this very powerful marketing tool, that they're less, likely, and people don't want to share each other's accounts. And so like we were all growing back in the day because we just thought, God, how cool is this? And like, of course, you're an awesome account. I want to share you, and let's do a giveaway together, and let's do challenges together. And so it worked really well because it was a very like collaborative effort between people back then. But I had
It's
no,
not collaborative now. You think that's changed?
yeah, I do think it's changed quite a bit. I don't find people as open to collaborating. Everyone, for the most part, not everyone, but a lot of people seem, the majority, let's say, are pretty self-interested in their own account and like posting their own content. And like we all used to just share one another's content, and like even if it was just one photo, you would tag that person. And even in stories now, like I'm seeing that people are sharing each other's accounts, and I've done it a few times, but not very often in comparison. So, and I didn't
Why do you
start,
think that is?
I think just because honestly, I think ego has gotten in the way too much. As people's accounts grow, and even, like I've battled this in myself, my own ego to, have 350,000 followers and these books and this, that, the other. And it's like, and companies come to you and want to work with you. And it does add a level of pressure. And then I also do believe that within that, it's become a very me game. Like as an influencer, your account is pretty much about you. And so you naturally stop kind of sharing other people as much. And I think that's been a very detrimental aspect to Instagram. But yeah, in terms of the press, I didn't get the press until I was really serving and doing things. So I was selling an ebook, and I was one of the first people on Instagram to ever sell an ebook. Like nobody was doing it. And to put this into perspective, it was a 4-point transaction because there wasn't the link in the bio at this point. So you would have to message me and say that you wanted my ebook. I would then get your email and say, okay, here's the PayPal invoice. You'd then email me back saying I paid for it. And then I would send you the ebook. And this was a $8 ebook at the time. So by the time I was living in London at this point, and I had made £100,000 from selling ebooks. And that's when the first newspaper picked up an article. But honestly, I was my own PR agent, and I wrote to all the magazines and newspapers and said, hey, you guys should talk about me because I'm doing something pretty cool that nobody else is doing. So I was my own PR agent, and I was doing something that was giving back to others, and I was doing something innovative. So that's all what led. Now everything kind of flows a little bit, but I found that I get press and PR when I do things that help other people, or I get a conversation started, or I do something that, adds value to people's lives.
How does somebody that goes, okay, I like to model you, I want to, duplicate some of the efforts that you've done. If you were trying to develop some press coverage for yourself and you're an influencer, and I'm serving people, how do you make what sort of process would you help get some visibility?
Great question. And that actually is an answer as well. I get asked all the time, how do you get verified on Instagram? And one of the biggest things is you do need to have press about you. So how do you go about getting press? Well, first off, go to your local news outlets. So local newspapers, local TV shows, local online publications, especially because they're always looking for new content multiple times a day. And it doesn't need to be the, big guys like the Times or the New York Post or anything like that. It's go to where you locally live and write to them and give them the story. So that's what I started doing in the beginning, was saying, hey, I made £100,000 from Instagram, which was unheard of. I want to share the story and like give tips on how other people can do that. For example, on my podcast last week. So the podcast is called #Adulting Life Hacks to Get Your Shit Together. And me and my co-host had Jillian Michaels, who's a, super badass fitness person. And she talked about the keto diet. And so we actually sent out a press release saying Jillian Michaels slams the keto diet. And then here's why. So we got a ton of traction from that because we utilized something that she did on our podcast that's already a hot topic right now. So anytime you can tap into a hot topic, whether it's on Twitter and joining a conversation.
Newsjacking, is that what that's called?
What?
Newsjacking, isn't that what it's called?
Exactly. Yeah, newsjacking. Giving a video response to something that comes up in your industry is another one. So there's so many ways, and I've always thought like, oh, I need to hire a PR agent, and then I did for my last book, and I realized that I'm actually a better PR agent because I know exactly what stories to pitch. I just don't have the connections necessarily, but I think that anyone listening, like if you're trying to get known in whatever field it is, reach out locally, find an interesting story, newsjag and tag along to something that's already being talked about, like as we did with the keto diet. And then do responses. So for me, like in the wellness industry, there's all these online publications and newspapers and everything saying that Instagram influencers shouldn't be trusted for their health advice. And so a great way for me would be to then do either a video response or a blog post kind of in retaliation and say, well, yes, I hear you and I agree with XXX, but here's my response, such as, we know that the food pyramid is changing. So therefore, how is my advice worse than we know the food pyramid is not actually healthy for people, for example? So you can,
so I gotta unpack that for a second.
Yeah.
So someone's gonna be listening to what you just described, and pardon my French, they're gonna shit their pants. They're actually gonna go and stand up to somebody and think of the fear, right? Like,
right.
I mean, is that one of the best ways, or like put yourself in the shoes of somebody that's listening, that's going, hey, look, I don't have the credibility yet that I feel anyway. So you're going to be filled with a bit of fear. How could they apply the same strategy without, because you're badass. You've got like tons of cred, and I've met you. You got so much confidence, and that's why you're on here, and we just connect so well. But imagine somebody that just doesn't quite have the lead up experience that you had. What would they do to maybe alter that a little bit and still have the same effect?
So starting at like a lower level, if you don't have that credibility, and when I'm saying on a side note about reaching out to local news outlets, they do stories all the time on unique individuals doing cool things in the community. So in no way, shape, or form should someone get scared off because they don't have the credentials. When I started and I reached out to all of these publications to say, hey, I've made this money, I didn't have anything to my name. I didn't have any of the credentials that I have now. So first and foremost, like I would say, find out what your fear is, because that's what's preventing a lot of people from taking it to the next level.
Totally.
Right? Like I hadn't been told no yet. And so I was like, I'm just going to go out and do this randomly. But I have learned that when the fear presents itself, that's when you stop those creative ideas. And that's when you say, oh, well, Nikki, I don't have as many credentials as you, or like, I don't have all the cool news stories that you do. And I'm going to challenge that and say, bullshit. Actually, everyone has a cool story. And there are so many places that you can get your story shared. So for example, like on my website, I've stopped doing it for the moment, but I'm going to pick it up, is something called Inspiring Interviews. And I interview people that are not famous who have had incredible stories and have overcome cancer or an eating disorder, or just done something really badass. So there are a number of blogs that you can get featured on. Guest blogging is another amazing one to do. There are a ton of websites that you can write for. I also get pitched like every day on my website that people want to do guest blogs. And I'm like, of course, that's awesome. Like, it means that I don't need to go and write a blog post today. So whatever industry you're in, it's starting to look at different ways of like, where can you get your name out? Can you get interviewed by someone? Can you contact your local news media? And do you have something interesting to share? Can you partner with something? So another one would be collaborations. Is there someone in your industry, like you and I, for example? I had you on my podcast and now you're having me on yours. And so collaborations, and you get to tap into each other's audience in that way. So there's so many ways. And then when someone, as you said before, is like shitting their pants that like all this information I'm giving, all it is that holds you back is fear that you're either not good enough or you can't do it. And that will be the number one thing to work on first.
Yeah, I think you're right. The antidote that I found for helping my clients over my 20 plus years when it comes to this was people just try to go and imagine themselves going to like the largest publication. So I think it's like exactly what you're saying is start small, start something that's reachable and building up some credibility, and you have a body of work, then you can point to something more established and go, hey, I've already written, 20 different articles in these local bloggers, and then maybe go to publication. Like if you desire to have a little bit more evidence in advance of just going straight to the publication. Is that fair to say that you're saying?
Oh, I mean, you nailed it in that. So for example, like the other week, I was interviewed by Forbes. This is 7 years later from when I started that I'm being interviewed. And they're now calling me a wellness expert. And like that took 7 years to build up to. That wasn't an overnight thing. And the amount of small blogs that I've been featured on in the start of my career. And when I say start, I'm talking like the first 3 years of my career. And I managed to get featured in a lot of, publications saying like, oh, best account to follow, all of that, because I was doing something exciting, new, and not many people were doing it at the time. So it's finding that unique selling point for whatever it is you do. And then totally agree with you of like, don't go to Time magazine and be like, I'm going to be on the cover of Time. Like it takes people 50 years to do that. And not being ashamed also to start small, because we all have to start somewhere.
So like, I think what Tony Robbins says, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Totally. And that's your lifetime too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that 7 year, sort of horizon from not having just even learning about the industry to within 7 years being the top expert in wellness, like that's a pretty, like if you think about it, that's a fast trajectory. But in today's world, it feels to me that so many people are expecting so much in such even a less amount of time that it's not realistic, nor is it sustainable. I'm just being honest. Like so many people are with all these like growth hacks and how to grow quickly. How would you help somebody sort of resolve that to add a bit of patience, but still be working diligently, towards growth? And how does somebody kind of just like work through the patience? Like, what did you do when you weren't seeing any evidence to kind of push through and just keep moving forward?
Oh my God. I mean, I still go through the growing pains and I get super frustrated, and I sound like a complete and utter brat to say like, oh, my account is stuck at 351,000 followers. Like, I realize I sound like a brat saying that, but at the same time, I've hit a plateau and I'm not growing. Like my account's not growing. My engagement isn't really changing. So I can even say this, like it applies to my own life, that I've plateaued where I am. So the advice that I would give to someone who's kind of looking at that is, I guess well, we know like we have to monitor everything we're doing, right? And it's taking a step back and saying, where am I? Where am I trying to go? And then what am I doing? And if I'm not growing or I'm not seeing the results, how can I change? And one thing I love about Tony is he talks about the 2 millimeter change. And I don't know if you've talked about that on
I haven't. Why don't you go explain to the audience what that is?
Okay. So the 2 millimeter change is basically thinking about it as a 1% divergence of where you are. So 2 millimeters is nothing, right? In the grand scheme of things. And when we're trying to see results, like let's say you want to lose weight, people will then go, okay, I'm going to lose 50 pounds and I'm going to do this and I'm going to run a marathon and da, 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 da. And then they start to realize their New Year's resolution, for example, fails because they were trying to do a 10-degree change instead of a 1 degree. So how he explains it, the 2 millimeter change, is that it takes 2 millimeters or the most minuscule amount of change to actually see results. And the example at Unleash the Power that we were just at was if a plane is going from California to New York and they input that in their system and then they change the direction by 1%, the plane will end up in Canada. And so what is that 1% change in your life or the 2 millimeters that will lead you to the big results you want? And yeah, it does take time. So if the plane is leaving from California, you're not going to see that 1 degree difference until you get to the end where you're then in another country. So in terms of, getting over a plateau or growing or trying to see a difference, it's what can you do that's a 2 millimeter difference. So for me, that 2 millimeter would be doing more collaborations with people, doing more giveaways to increase my engagement. Or maybe it's even just looking at, what is the information that I'm giving? Is it actually reaching the people that I want it to? And if so, are they engaging with it? If they're not engaging with it, then I need to change my direction.
Interesting. So what you're almost saying is that, to get out of a plateau and to create growth is to basically look at yourself and go, regardless of the algorithm or the different things, those are just other variables. But if you find maybe there's a correlation between your growth and your personal growth, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely your own personal growth is going to affect everything you do in your life. I mean, it will affect your business, your output, your creativity, but at the same time, that's going to be one aspect of it, but it's changing. If something isn't working, then you change it. Another way to look at that, right?
Constructive reasoning, change one variable and identify what made the difference.
Exactly. So, like, let's say I'm sharing with my audience tips on nutrition. And I'm kind of known for these pretty lengthy captions. I like doing them because I'm trying to add value outside of just a photo. Now, if people are not engaging with the content that I'm posting, and then what happens with the algorithm, for example, is if my audience doesn't engage with my content, then it says, oh, that photo was not a very popular photo. Therefore, we're not going to put it on other people's feed that follow me. So in that sense, if I'm not getting that engagement within the first, let's say 20 minutes, which is the most important time for when you're posting a photo, then I maybe need to go and take a look and am I posting at the wrong time of day? Or am I posting too long of captions for that time of day where people are at work and just scrolling? Or do I need to do more videos, for example? So there's all these different ways in which I could go. And the 2 millimeter change would be, let me test out one thing. Let's just change the time of day that I'm posting and let me measure it, take stock, and then see, was that the change that I needed? Does that all make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Is it possible also that you've been going through such a rapid sort of evolution of yourself that people are kind of been following along for the journey? And do you feel that the evolution, if you said that your personal evolution sort of stalled, that would be the case? Or do you think this is an Instagram thing, just the algorithm?
I mean, it depends, honestly. Like, whoever's listening, it depends on what they're trying to do. Like, for me and my own journey, I basically share my journey through the photos, through the captions. And when I started the account, it was actually called Skinny Mini Me _XOXO. And I do still have followers that write to me saying, oh my God, I was following you from the Skinny Mini Me days. And Skinny
Well,
Mini
that's amazing.
Me, right? And that like 2013 is a long time ago. So I I had this account which was representative of my eating disorder at the time, that I was trying to be skinny and I was always looking at skinny girls and like Skinny Mini Me, right? Like tells you the whole thing. Then I changed the account name to Stay Sharp, Be Strong. And that actually is when I saw some of my quickest growth, because people really related to that mission, let's say. But in that sense, and just like why I changed it to my name, just Nikki Sharp, is because I saw in Google Analytics that when people were searching, they either completely butchered the Stay Sharp, Be Strong, or they were just searching for my name. So I thought, okay, let's just make it simple. Let me do my name. And then since then, I've been sharing my own journey into spirituality and self growth and work and the branding side. And I share my wins as well as my struggles with my audience. So when it comes to, someone, whoever's listening, as I said when I started this, is if you're trying to like hack the algorithm, right, and do these like quick rapid fire growth tools, yeah, they do work, but at the same time, it's not going to give you sustained longevity, and it's not going to build you up that career that's going to get you featured on Time magazine, for example. So if you're looking for quick fix, you're going to get quick results, but that also means a quicker downfall.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more to that. So this interesting discussion about switching from a name to your personal name, getting to a personal brand. So there's a lot of people like myself, for example, I have a personal brand, and I have my business brand, and I operate both. For someone that's like yourself, you've kind of wrapped up all the things that you do in under one name, Nikki Sharp. How do you recommend personally branding yourself when you do, maybe somebody does a variety of different things like you do? You've got a pretty good spread of different things that you do, but you do such a good job of kind of like bringing it to you. What would you say, like what kind of branding advice, process, or thinking to help somebody that's maybe struggling with, wanting to put it under one banner, or they just wanted to express it so it makes sense of the different things to do? Because I think there's so many people that are multi-passion entrepreneurs that struggle with this.
Yes. Oh my God. What a terrific question. Okay. First off, my biggest tip is going to be don't use your name. And that's going to go probably, yeah, right. Like I think I'm going to
hold on here. Stop. The very first thing you say is do not use your name.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm listening. You got my full attention.
And I'm probably going to I'm going to get marketers calling me up and be like, what the fuck, Nikki? So sorry, I hope I'm allowed to cuss. I'm sorry.
Fuck yeah, I don't care.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone too.
No, all my podcasts. I think I gave you the show notes, and I said drop it. Oh, maybe I took that out, but yeah, F-bombs are totally acceptable. Okay. Dogs barking, whatever, this is real.
So yeah, don't use your name. It is super hard to brand yourself under your name. And if I could have, so I started with Stay Sharp, Be Strong. I wish in a sense I had kept that, because it's easier to grow a brand underneath a name that's not yours, because then you can do tiers of different things, right? Like when it's just your name, it's very hard to actually know what that name is, what your values are, all of that. So like my website, for example, if you go there, I do have the about, the values, all of that. Whereas I think that if you choose a name that represents your brand, you automatically are going to get more visibility. There's a web.
Okay, that makes sense if you're a brand, but if you're trying to be an influencer, isn't the whole point of being an influencer is that your name is the brand? Or are you saying there's a lot of influencers that have they don't use their name, but they're still an influencer?
Yeah. So here's my second truth bomb. Don't try to be an influencer. Yeah,
I agree to that.
People come to me all the time and they're like, okay, I want to be an influencer. And actually I lived in LA before. I lived in LA for 4 years, kind of where I wrote my books, and I would hire personal assistants, and I would always have someone come in. They'd have to do an internship with me, and then they would, either not graduate or they'd get offered a position. And the people that even still made it to that next level, who wanted to work with me after the paid internship, they were all in LA and they were all trying to learn how to be an influencer. And so I even had one girl off the bat, like before she even started doing the internship program, to say, can you teach me how to be an influencer? And my advice was, A, you don't try to like set out to be an influencer, and B, you have to find what it is that actually you're giving value to other people for. So when someone's trying to be an influencer, yes, using your name is good, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter, because influencer is a very short-term thing. Let's say I became an influencer because of what I was doing, because of these books I was selling and the ebooks that were changing people's lives. I never set out to be an influencer. And I think it also shows, like, I don't aspire to show my boobs and my ass. Like, those girls have, yes, 12 million followers. Yes, they're making a lot of money, but that's a very short-term career at the end of the day.
Well, they're not really, they've got people's attention,
yeah,
but they may not have their trust to the level that you do.
Exactly. And so that's like, when we're talking influencer, A, who are you trying to influence? And B, what are you trying to influence? So for me, it's more important to have people's trust long-term, that longevity thing, than it is to, get 100,000 likes on a photo because it's, boobies galore type thing. So going back to the, what do you kind of brand yourself as? I fully think that people should not choose their name. I think that it's much easier to grow a brand under, like, with your name associated to it. And then, you can choose your name, but just know, like, it is harder in essence to grow that, especially if you're doing a company or something outside of just like being an influencer. And I think that starting to kind of take a look at the different industries, and obviously I'm in the health and wellness industry, so I do see a lot of people coming out and just doing their names, but I don't know.
It's hard to differentiate.
Yeah.
It's like if you can, in a brand marketing, if you can be more clear in your brand so it really connects with the audience you're trying to develop, it's costs less time and it gets you there quicker.
Yeah.
And I even take a step back. It sounds to me that influencer is almost like something that you're moving away from, even though that's what people maybe try to categorize you as. You're really trying to be someone of service.
Totally. And actually, I'm quoted in a magazine saying something like, don't call me an influencer. I'm not an influencer, but I am trying to be influential. And that to me is a really big.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So I almost want to find that magazine. It's something along the lines of, don't call me an influencer because I'm not, but do call me influential. So my whole mission and when I started my brand, I said, I want to be the Oprah/Beyonce of the health world, meaning everyone trusts Oprah. She touches something and it literally turns to gold. That woman, like, she can talk about a diet pill and it sells out the next day. And I want that sort of trustworthiness with my community. And I know that takes time. I know it's not going to come overnight. And then I want to be like Beyonce in that she is just like a feminine powerhouse. She's a goddess. She's sexy. And I'm trying to do that for the health industry. And I don't think that anyone's really nailed that yet. So for me, I want to be influential, but being called an influencer, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm an influencer because I get to influence people every day, but I'm not what a typical influencer is like setting out to be in today's day and age.
Right.
And
So the
yeah,
influencer feels very egocentric,
exactly.
where being influential is what?
Um, Being influential is, as you said, really about giving value and creating a long-term brand. So going back to that whole like the quick fix growth hacking, that's more of the influencer type thing. And the long term that will get you on Time Magazine, that's going to be it being influential. And everyone is influential at the end of the day. You don't need a huge following. Like companies are now working with micro influencers that have under 5,000 followers because they're realizing that those guys are actually selling better to their friends than someone like me.
It's actually true. And in fact, I think that what you're going to see is the large following of influencers not being quite having quite this sway in terms of people paying for posts because it feels a little less authentic. But with people with smaller groups, it becomes more about word of mouth than it is about post and sell, if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
And that's like spot on. It's companies and brands, and myself included. Like I've worked with influencers when my books come out, and I actually do go, I would rather go for the micro influencer who, has that 2,000 follower community and their community loves them. And I'd rather get that, let's say 2,000 sales from that than go pay an influencer that has 1 million followers. And I honestly probably wouldn't get as good of results there. So the micro influencer, if you think about it, is exactly that. It's the word of mouth versus an influencer that has 500,000 or more is thought of as a TV advertisement at this point.
Right. It's funny because I was at Gary Vaynerchuk's 4D program in New York, and I recorded my session with him and I shared it with Jill, my beautiful fiance. Mm-hmm. And in there, he was asking about my following and size and stuff like that and things I do. And he goes, "Oh, you're a micro influencer." And at the time, I kind of felt a little bit slated. And even Jill was like, "Oh, isn't that cute?" But now I realize, no, I've got a really concentrated, great audience. It's not about, the size of audience as much as the engagement and the people that I really care to serve,
It's exactly that. And it can be hard. Like I totally get it when, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or, Twitter or any of these places where you have kind of those lower numbers, it's an ego thing first off, right? To want to grow. Like let's just be clear. That is the ego saying, I want to be known. So what I was going to say before is that influencer is basically the new wave of celebrity. So people would move to Hollywood and they would all say, I'm going to become famous. And then they would go work, their night job at the restaurants as the waitress. Now they are want to be influencers, all doing the same thing, all taking photos next to the pink walls and then driving Uber on the side. And so it's kind of this like new wave of what fame is and what celebrity is, but it's driven by ego, and more numbers is also driven by ego. But if you are putting out epic fucking content and you are giving value to people as you are, Scott, like all of your stuff you do is amazing. And even, our conversation earlier about branding and you were helping me out with some things. It's like you have knowledge. And so for anyone who's worried about being micro influencer or not having the followers, it's like you can get to my level, for example, if you A, have tenacity and perseverance, B, you work on the whole fear thing, and then C, if you keep putting out consistently good things that help people. And that naturally is going to build your audience, get them to really trust your product. And like, I would rather have an audience of lower numbers that goes and buys anything that I put out than a huge audience of people that don't buy it.
Okay, so let me unpack that. So if I understood correctly, what you're saying is that focus more on creating epic fucking content rather than trying to get a big fucking audience, correct?
Yeah. And when I say epic fucking content, I mean things that light your soul on fire and that help other people. So one of the biggest mistakes that people do that I see is they put out content that they think their audience is going to want. They think that their audience will want it, rather than going to what the audience actually wants. And a great example of this is my own YouTube series. So when I moved to Paris, I started my YouTube up again, and I started doing a little bit of travel vlogging and like why I moved, all of that. And that was me posting things that I thought my audience cared about. I thought they cared about why I moved to Paris. No, my audience honestly doesn't care really. They just want to see the beautiful photos. What they care about is how am I taking care of my health and what can they do to implement it? So everything we're talking about today, for example, it's like, what can people actually go and do? And at the end of this, I'll give a few, direct takeaways of like how to implement these things. But I was making the mistake of thinking my audience cared when in fact they really want to know, how do I get a flat tummy for summertime? Or how do I clear acne? How do I order at a restaurant when it doesn't have healthy food? So I even learned the lesson that I'm sharing today.
That was amazing. Like, so let's summarize this again. So start with epic fucking content and just sort of like summarize that. Like just go, say that again.
Epic fucking content is something that lights your soul on fire, because if you're not passionate about it, your audience will not be either. That first and foremost. Epic fucking content is going to be something that when your audience reads it, watches it, listens to it, they walk away feeling like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I spent the time to do that, because the only thing that we don't get back in life is our time. So if you're doing something that is giving massive value and then is helping them to improve their life, that would be considered epic fucking content. And then 3, it's giving your audience what they want, not what you think they want.
And I love how you said that content that lights your soul on fire. It totally reframes it, because when you first say the word epic fucking content, you think of, okay, I need to make it more high quality. So tell us, unpack that a little bit. Like, what kind of content does it have to be that lights your soul on fire? Does it have to be super produced? Does it just give more dimension to that?
Totally. All right. So when it comes to content, do not try to go for perfectionism. And I am the master at fucking up my own rule, because like I'll do a YouTube video and I get so irritated that it's not done perfectly. But actually there's a trend happening and everyone is trying to do things opposite of perfection. They're the up and coming influencers,
purposely out of frame.
Out of frame, right? And like there's a lot of influencers now that are taking photos and adding filters to make it look like they didn't even take a nice photo. So I think people have gotten so sick of perfectionism that we're going a whole different way on that. And people are wanting to see the authentic, real side. That's why you're hearing more and more celebrities come out with like, oh, I had postpartum depression and I battled, insomnia, or whatever it is. And I give a lot of references of the health industry just because this is obviously kind of what I live and breathe, but this can relate to anything. I do always believe that no matter what industry you're in, you should be authentic, sharing a little bit about your story. So your customers, consumers, whoever it is you're marketing to, they want to know what sets you apart. They want to know how you got there. So very much like for me, I got here because I was a model going through 2 eating disorders. I had insomnia, depression, acne, all the things I said at the beginning, and I shared my journey. So I made people part of my journey, and I was looking for their input as well and their advice. And like when I go through something today, I say, hey guys, like, even though I may know the answer, I still try to engage my audience and say like, oh, I'm getting, acne on my chin, which actually just happened the other day. And it's like, I'll post a thing and be like, what tips do you guys have? So they then feel like they're part of something. They feel meaningful within my life. And then when it comes to content, so as I said, like posting a photo of like, oh, I got a few pimples, like people want to see that sort of thing. They want to know that A, you're human, B, you've been through it, and then C, that you are an expert. So when choosing a social media channel to, whatever it is you're doing, if you are not comfortable on video, then why are you on YouTube, for example? Or if you hate blogging, why in God's name would you then start a blog? Because you're not going to keep up with it. So I always say, when it comes to epic fucking content that lights your soul on fire, do the medium that also lights your soul on fire. So maybe you love Twitter and you love getting into those like little Twitter rants and giving your day, like sharing things. Well, if you do that and you're consistent, your Twitter following will grow and you will get noticed. The same as like LinkedIn, the same as Pinterest, the same as a blog or a podcast. If you are passionate about podcasting, then great, do that and be consistent and know that you are going to go through a lot of times where you see no results. And if you give up, as we said, the quick fix, like once the quick fix happens and you get those followers or you get a few downloads and then they stop, you can't lose hope. So also being consistent, like me and Zach, my co-host, our podcast is 30 minutes. We never change that. We know that after 3 seasons, as much as we want to make it longer, that's what our audience has gotten used to. And there are times where, like I mentioned before, like we had Jillian Michaels on, and in the middle of it, she starts kind of like jokingly yelling at her makeup artist. And we could have cut that out, but it gave the podcast humanity, just as cussing gives things humanity and kind of catches you off guard. So letting go of perfection and then really choosing a medium that you're passionate about is, I guess, would be the long answer for that unpacked question.
That's a great takeaway. I've kind of known that a little bit, but I've never really kind of articulated that. So that's a really great thing that I would just restate, which is like having a passion about a channel that you naturally feel comfortable in and championing that. My one follow-up question to that would be, in the many cases, because I'm always, as you know, I think Nikki, anything that comes out, I test. And a lot of times I'm not comfortable with a channel, but I kind of fall in love with it after I'm used to trying it for a while. So do you have any, is it just more that's what you start with, or are you saying just go all in on that channel?
First off, go all in on the channel you're good at. Know that that's going to be your primary thing. So if you're good at writing, then keep writing, because as we're seeing, the trends come and go. I mean, podcasting was in a few years ago, then it dropped out. Blogging was in a few years ago. Now it's kind of dropped out. They will come back. They all circle around. I mean, we know fashion circles around. So blogging, for example, will come back. If you're good at it, you enjoy it.
I watched a podcast in a down market of podcasting. Oh, yay me.
Well, and like everyone's doing podcasts now. Like literally everyone is. And then it will get oversaturated. And then, YouTubing will come back. And we know Instagram like is kind of always there, but like Instagram itself goes through waves. And so I also agree, like for me, I'm not super comfortable with like the travel vlogs and talking to myself in the street with a camera. So when I moved to Paris, I challenged myself to do it and get better at it. It's not easy. Do I think I'm like great at it by any means? No. Do I enjoy it? Yes. And that's the key thing there. If you don't enjoy it and you're not good at it, no matter how much you practice, you're not really going to start to enjoy it. Because it's not about, as we master things, we might get to enjoy them more. But as you're saying, Scott, you kind of dive in, but I don't think you would dive into something unless you're intrigued or fascinated or you felt called to do it. Am I correct?
Well, I have a different perspective. I'm actually diving into the channels because for me, part of what I'm passionate about is identifying and articulating and working with any channel around marketing. So I find my juice is just, I do have channels I prefer, but part of it is part of my job, I would say, is making sure I'm up to speed on the different channels so I can help clients understand and navigate them.
Yeah, and I agree on that completely. I'm the same. I know all the channels. Do I prefer some of them? Absolutely. Does that mean that I'm going to and should be spending more time on those channels I'm good at? Yes, because what's happening with social media and not just social media, but or well, I guess when I say social, I'm including all of the channels such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. But then also I am including blog posts and doing guest blog posts and things like that. So when it comes to that, people are spreading their time so thinly across all these different platforms that none of them are actually going to grow. So
Great point.
right, like we know we don't have exponential time. We have a limited time every day. And let's say you have a family and you have to eat and you're trying to stay healthy, so you're working out. And as I know with you, Scott, you have a podcast, and then you have your lovely fiance that you want to spend time with. And it's like suddenly you don't have that much time left to be on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and your blog and respond to emails. So then it's going through and really figuring out, okay, where is my message going to be delivered the best? Maybe your message will be delivered best to LinkedIn. Maybe those are the sort of people that will listen and engage. Or, for me, it's Instagram, but also knowing who your audience is. That's really important because Instagram is a lower demographic and they make less money than the Pinterest community. So demographics for Pinterest are like 40-something females who have a much higher income than any other social media channel. So, and they have more spendable money. So it's really important also to know where your audience is, because if I'm on Twitter and I know that I'm trying to reach, women in the Midwest who are working moms at home with kids, and as I said, I'm on LinkedIn, then I'm wasting my time, and then I'm probably going to get really pissed off and lose my passion because I'm not seeing the growth and I'm not seeing the results I want. So that could even be the 2mm change, is just looking at what channel are you on and where are you prioritizing your time, and is the audience you're trying to attract really on that channel? Like I know on Instagram, it's actually pretty hard to sell a book because a book is $25, and a lot of people on Instagram don't even want to buy a $25 thing. But I know that, let's say, like a $5 lip gloss goes very easily.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is about creating alignment, and it's just like start first with what you're passionate about, creating epic fucking content. The way in which you produce content that you naturally feel most comfortably and gifted to delivering, and then find the right platforms that are matched with your customer. Did I summarize that correctly?
You summarized that beautifully. And then the last thing with that would be get over the perfectionism that we all have.
Right. Right. And fear. You mentioned that
fear.
too as well.
Let's add about all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack on that. So we're going to wrap up here a little bit because I'm going to try to stay true to my podcast consistency, which is like keeping it in and around an hour. Yeah. Let's talk real talk. There's news in the Twitterverse and universe about Instagram changing, and one of the things that I heard they were testing with is removing likes. What do you think of that? I
just saw that they have 7 new features that are being beta tested right now, and one of them is removing likes. I believe that unless they do it for everyone, it's not going to work, because one of the things that drives people, and this is, based on psychology, is that when you see something that already has a lot of likes, you are more likely to then engage with it. And this study after study has proven this. So let's say I go to your post and I see there's no no likes on it. It just says many people have liked it or whatever they're putting there. The eye has been so trained for the past, whatever, 8 years or something, or I guess 9 years now. They created it in 2010. So over 9 years, we have been so trained to see that number that if we're scrolling and we go so quick and we don't see it, I don't believe that it's going to get as many likes and engagement. And also the reason that the whole algorithm works is because we know that someone likes it. It gets, put to your feed. And for me, like if I see someone and there's 100,000 likes, I'm curious. I look at it more. I read the caption because I want to see what was it that stood out for other people. So I think it's going to be either everyone has to do it or no one will do it.
So say everyone gets the no likes. What do you think then?
I don't think that will ever work because Instagram knows.
I doubt they'll do it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. But if they did, I'd be super interested to see what that does and how that works, right? Like, because, you're right. People are, it's a way of voting, and identifying content that's, liked by one and not by many or whatever, right?
Exactly. I don't believe that it will work because at the end of the day, Instagram is owned by Facebook and Facebook is a behemoth mother effing giant with kind of bad intentions, and they want money at the end of the day. And brands, I mean, if I was a brand reaching out to you, let's say, and I want to push, and actually this is a great example. I'm writing an e-course on social media and how to effectively build your community and how to grow, how to engage, how to work with influencers like this. I'm so passionate about this e-course I'm doing. So let's say, once I'm finished with that, I come to you and I want you to then promote it. If the like button isn't there, I'm not going, I know on the back end of things, as the brand, I can then ask you, can you give me the analytics? But I would be less inclined, I think, to have someone promote it if it wasn't being liked. That also then goes.
Well, they still might have the analytics in the back end that you could share, but not make it visible to people.
Not make it visible.
That's possible. I actually have a theory.
Yes, tell me.
Okay. My theory is if they do it, it's going to be a Trojan horse where you're actually going to pay to actually have likes visible.
Interesting. That would be.
And everybody's going to pay for that.
I don't think.
Period.
See, I don't think so. I think people would not. I think that would backfire. That's a very interesting theory.
Behind every one of these little ideas, you got to think about there's money.
Of course.
Money drives their decision making. It's not consumer experience. They say it is. I don't believe it. I have massive mistrust of all social channels. I believe that everybody needs to be wary and don't put all your eggs in the social media basket, and make sure that you're diversifying and taking care of yourself, because you never know. I mean, look, Nikki, you and I have the same following on Facebook. So we both have about 16,000. Yeah. I think that's what yours was, right? Yeah. Okay. So do you remember when, I don't know how long it took you the same amount of time to build it, right? About 7 years?
I think that one was quicker, but then I've pretty much completely stopped using my Facebook.
Yeah. So you post something on Facebook. How many people do you feel it organically reaches right now?
Like 10. It's such bullshit.
It is so annoying. I've spent so much time building my 16,000 followers that it's just only way I'm reaching if I pay for it. So that's kind of why I go back to the Instagram likes removal, is there's going to be some pay to play.
I'm sure there will be. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about before of, becoming an influencer and all of that. And that's great if you're becoming an influencer, but your end goal is to, let's say, as you're saying, diversify. And I always work with clients on this, for me, it was writing these books. So if Instagram were to die tomorrow, you can Google my name and I have a lot of stuff that comes up the same as for you. The people that are only on Instagram and striving to be the influencer, well, they're going to end up like the Vine stars. And if, those of you who are listening don't know what Vine was.
That's a great analogy.
People had 100 million followers on Vine. And literally one day they said, yeah, we're done. We're closing it tomorrow. And then they did. And there's a bunch of...
I think there's a Netflix story about the top influencer in Vine that was like, went into deep depression.
Oh, exactly.
Tried to diversify, go to a new channel, and she couldn't.
And so all of these people then became super depressed because one day they're famous and the next day they're not. And so various publications were doing articles on them saying, like, where are they now? And for nearly all of them, it was the same thing, that they had fame, they got super depressed, and then they didn't know what to do with their lives. So you're totally correct. And anyone listening, please do not try to be an influencer on Instagram unless you have another goal and you're, diversifying where your time goes and you're building up your blog as an expert in your field. Like, the influentialness is more important than the influencer.
Boom. I think that's exactly how we end this. It's like, I think you said it so well, where it's make epic fucking content that lights your soul.
Yeah.
The rest will fall into place.
And consistency, perseverance, and dealing with the fears that we all have.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredible. I feel like we have like another hour, maybe a second follow-up podcast at some point here. So if I want to just point everybody to, where they can follow you, find you, it sounds like if they just Google Nikki Sharp, you're found. But is there a couple URLs or places that you want to just point people to?
Yeah, I mean, because I am my own brand with my own name, nikkisharp.com. And on Instagram, it's Nikki Sharp as well. And also, I'd like to point out and say, I mean, I've stayed true to who I was when I started, that if you follow me and send me a message, I still respond to them, every single one that I get personally. And I love meeting people that follow me. I love, like, if you find me from this podcast, please drop a line and say hello. I just love connecting with people, hearing your stories, and I'm feeling a bit motivated to start up my inspiring interviews too. So if anyone has a really epic story, then send me a message.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nikki. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you. You're such an amazing human being. You're so giving, and I'm so grateful that you gave us the opportunity of your time. And I'm looking forward to collaborating with you in the future. I mean, you're just top. You're just the best.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much.
This was amazing. Thank you. And I hope everyone listening that you guys took a lot away. I know I said a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. You're on the Groundswell Marketing Podcast here with Nikki Sharp, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Mahalo.